Oh my goodness. We have our next confirmed pay-per-view. It's not Jake Paul. It's not Logan Paul. It's not Floyd Mayweather. It's Jeff Bezos against Elon Musk. 15 rounds, no rules, cage match. And they literally just have to throw insults at each other. There's not going to be any punching, any violence. But it's just going to be them insulting each other, poking each other with the stick, maybe some crazy shit like this, because this is getting real. The Twitter feud just got serious. Elon Musk just tweeted that Jeff Bezos actually has one job, which is to file lawsuits against SpaceX. That kind of thing you don't hear every day. Even though we know billionaires tend to fight, who has the bigger spaceship? But that's not something you see every day, even out of a guy like Elon, who's not known to be politically correct. And jokes aside, the background for this feud is quite serious. We have Amazon and SpaceX competing for a very lucrative business that doesn't really exist yet. Now, jokes aside, it's a huge business. Space, the uncharted territory, it's there for the taking, and these two billionaires are fighting for dominance. And I get it, there's no rules in war and love, but this is getting out of hand, because if you actually look at the facts, you'll find out that what Elon is saying seems to be justified, in my opinion, and everything I'll say in this video is just my opinion. Might be inaccurate, might be wrong, might be the ramblings of a madman. You have to do your own research, but I feel like Elon has a valid point here, because in the response letter for SpaceX, there's a lot of information that you can't argue against, because these are straight up numbers. I love how Elon just kills people with numbers. Maybe it's going to be a numbers cage match. They can do math. Who does it faster? I don't know. But anyways, here's the story in a nutshell for a guy like me who doesn't really care about space. Quite simple. We have Amazon competing with SpaceX, basically trying to get dominant in space. However, while every single company is fighting for that internet out of space, it has to go through a lot of regulatory hoops. And the body that's responsible for regulating these efforts, behemoth efforts, is the Federal Communications Committee or Commission. I don't know, the FCC. Basically, both of these companies filing shit to the FCC, and FCC basically says, well, we need to see more of that, we need to see more of that, and blah, blah, blah. So, ordinary course of business, we just had SpaceX file some sort of a technical amendment to some sort of technical nonsense. Who gives a shit about it? Immediately right after, Amazon files an objection that it's not good, it's against regulations, it doesn't comply. They're basically volunteering to do the FCC's job to basically look at these amendments and say, well, they're not good enough. And of course, I'll show you in a second the SpaceX application and the Amazon response and then the SpaceX rebuttal. I'll show you everything. But what I find really amusing is that SpaceX had such a killer response, it's literally an instant classic. The only thing they said in their response is, hey, Amazon has been completely ignoring the FCC. They're non-responsive. They don't even explain their stuff. They're completely MIA. It takes them months on months just to reply to the FCC. But whenever we file something, they're there within days, basically bombarding us with requests, cancellations, basically badgering us because they can afford it. They have endless legal fees, right? That's the whole point here. And I think it's really funny because if you look at the numbers that SpaceX is showing, if these numbers are correct, it's a really hard argument for Amazon to basically say, well, it's just a coincidence, because it doesn't feel like it. But I'll show you in a second and you decide. So everything started with this tweet by Michael Sheets. SpaceX responds to Amazon's request that the FCC dismiss the Starlink Gen 2 amendment, calling it a continuation of efforts by the Amazon family of companies to hinder competitors. Here's a copy of Amazon's dismissal request, which emphasizes that by leaving nearly every major detail unsettled, such as altitude, inclination, and even the total amount of satellites, SpaceX application fails every test. So essentially what we have here is SpaceX, a company that has nothing to do with Amazon, is filing for FCC approval for certain amendments to its program or its plan. And now we have Amazon actually stepping into it for no reason, because they have nothing to do with it. It's either SpaceX or the FCC. But Amazon are basically looking from the outside saying, hey guys, you shouldn't approve this application because, it's not very clear. And SpaceX had a banger of a response. Essentially, it's saying that Amazon's recent efforts are essentially just another step in its continuing efforts to slow down the competition while neglecting to resolve the Commission's concerns about Amazon's own business. The Commission issued an order in July 2020 informing Amazon that it had not provided sufficient information about how its proposed system would protect others from interference or meet the Commission's rules for orbital debris. But while Amazon has filed nothing with the Commission to address these conditions on its own license for nearly 400 days, it took only 4 days to object to SpaceX next generation system. In fact, Amazon has not had a single meeting with the commission this year about how it intends to resolve the commission's interference or safety concerns, but it had 15 minutes in that same span just about SpaceX. While Amazon has waited 15 months to explain how its system works, it has lodged objections to SpaceX on average about every 16 days this year. I think the numbers are self-evident. There's no way to confuse what's really going on here. Elon Musk actually replied on this tweet saying filing legal actions against SpaceX is actually his full-time job. Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that this is the only thing Jeff Bezos is doing, but the numbers you've seen on the screen right now, which is the complete neglect of Amazon to resolve their own business and how fast they're moving to cockblock basically SpaceX, it's actually quite alarming. And I'm not going to lie here and say, well, it's probably a coincidence. I mean, it doesn't look good. The numbers don't add up for Amazon. And I think Elon Musk has a good point. They definitely need to focus on themselves instead of stopping competition. If you're that confident in your product, you shouldn't be working against the competition. You should be focusing on your own lane. And hey, I know this video was a little bit different. That's not the usual stock stuff we're talking about, but I thought this would be really interesting to talk about because it seems like it's heading to pay-per-view. This, if happens, is going to be the biggest pay-per-view in history. I mean, this would make Floyd Mayweather look like a freaking grocery store. It's going to be insane. And I hope they let me call it. I mean, why not? They need a Russian crazy rambling madman to call this sort of a fight. I can do it with Marquise Brownlee. Hey, Marquise, if you're watching this, shout me out. I'm just kidding. Shout out to channel members. Shout out to Patreons. We'll see you tomorrow. Sayonara.